Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Holy Smoke, Cigars, and Spirituality. This is Kristian Smith. I am the host and the heretic, and I'm glad that you're here with us again. This is episode 10 of season 2. We only have 2 more episodes after this one. So it has flown by, it feels, but it's been a great, great season thus far. And I'm so excited about today's episode because a very, 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 very special lady in my life is our special guest today. Her name is Pamela Merritt, and she is a religious trauma expert. And I'm so excited for her to be here today and share some of her insight on religious trauma and her practice called Therapy in Theology. You're going to love it. So, for those who may be here for the first time, Holy Smoke, Cigars, and Spirituality, we create disruptive faith-based content for the everyday person. So shout out to everybody that listens to us on the podcast platforms and to our folks over at Fam Radio who've been listening to us this season. And special shout out to all of our patrons who are here with us in the live virtual audience and who get the early access to all the content and who get what I believe to be some of the funniest behind the scenes content, because I promise you, we get in here at least 15, 20 minutes before we start recording and just have a ball. And then depending on how heavy the show is, we go another 30 minutes after the show, just continuing the conversation. So we really, really love our patrons. If you want to become a patron, go over to patreon.com/TFCATL and join us. There are a number of levels that you can join. Of course, the Kingmaker is going to tell you you got to sign up for the $30 membership. But I am going to tell you sign up whatever you fit in. We have 3 levels. So please do join us over there.
And a fourth one on the way.
We got a fourth one on the way. We'll talk more about that later. So one thing about Holy Smokes is we want to make this for the everyday person. So we try to keep our information as accessible as possible. So we have a mechanism here that we use to monitor people's language. We're not concerned with profanity. Sometimes the topics that we discuss, they require a little bit of profanity just to get our thoughts out. So we don't monitor profanity. We monitor academic words, because a lot of times people here will use words that we've picked up during the course of our education. And when somebody uses an academic word and they don't define it immediately, they have to put a dollar in our dollar jar. So whenever you hear this, that means that somebody got hit with the dollar jar and they have to define that word and they owe us a dollar. And just for the record, today we have Kirkland, aka Big Sexy, working the dollar jar, one of our producers. So all the straight cisgender people on the cast need to get ready because he's coming for us. Grayson is safe. They're in cahoots. I don't know what this is about. Uh,
Can we vote him out on Tuesday?
Nah, man, we got to keep Big Sexy on the squad, man. We got to keep him on the squad. Um, And then we also added another component this year because we have some brilliant thinkers that are a part of this cast. And sometimes we have these mic drop moments that people just leave us in awe and make us think. So whenever somebody has a mic drop moment, you're going to hear these air horns. All right. And that's never planned. It just happens sporadically. We don't know when we're going to get it, but I think it's everybody's dream to get the mic drop air horns. I know I have celebrated them intensely every time I've gotten it. So that's the basic outline for Holy Smokes. We have one rule here, one very important rule. And that one rule at Holy Smokes is that we respect each other's lived experiences.
What's the rule, Reverend?
The rule again is that we respect each other's lived experiences.
One more time.
One more time, Reverend.
One more time for the Kingmaker. One rule at Holy Smokes is that we respect each other's lived experiences and that we don't uplift our theories over what people have actually lived. So anytime somebody is a part of Holy Smokes and they confront somebody whose lived experience contradicts their theory or their doctrine, we ask that person and challenge that person to take that as an opportunity to learn from what that person has lived. So that's the one rule at Holy Smokes. It is rooted in Greatest Commandment Theology, which I happen to write a book about recently. You should go pick it up at christianasmith.com. Greatest Commandment Theology simply states that our love for God is expressed in how we love our neighbor, which is an extension of how we love ourselves. Therefore, you cannot fully love God if you don't love your neighbor, and you can't fully love your neighbor if you don't love yourself. I take this from the straight from the mouth of Jesus, as we see in the Gospels, and is reinforced all throughout Scripture. Pamela's actually holding up a copy of the book right now. Please go grab a copy of the book. It is life changing, and I'm saying that because it changed my life. So I believe it can do the same for others because it did that for me. So that.
Hey, Holy Smokes family, this is Kristian Smith. I'm the host and the heretic of Holy Smokes Cigars and Spirituality. And I'm excited today because we're announcing the launch of the Holy Smokes Cigar Club. Here's how you sign up. If you go to patreon.com/TFCATL, there's a Holy Smoke Cigar Club sign up where for $20 a month you can get access to all of our visual footage. And you can be a part of our live studio audience every single month. You can provide feedback. You can tell us what episodes you want us to film in the future. And then the most important piece, every single month, you're going to get a Holy Smokes branded cigar in your mailbox directly from us. It's just $20 a month. You're getting way more than what you paid for, and it's going to go so far in helping us to continue to create content just like this, because that's what we do. Disruptive, faith-based content for the everyday person. So listen, go sign up. Holy Smoke Cigar Club, patreon.com/TFCATL, and start getting your own Holy Smoke cigar in the mail every single month. We hope to see you there. Looking forward to it.
So that's the one rule. We're going to go ahead and get into some introductions today. Like I said, we have a very special guest, Pamela Merritt. I'm going to allow her to introduce herself first. And this is what I want everybody on the cast to do today. In your introduction, tell us, what are you smoking? What are you drinking? If anything. And then I want you to tell us today, what is your funniest church story ever? And this question is important because we're talking about religious trauma. It's more than church hurt. And in my experience, generally our funniest stories can be tied to somebody's church hurt. And I think today what we want to do is make sure we understand, uh, from the mind of a religious trauma expert, what's the difference between religious trauma and church hurt. So again, in your introduction, what are you smoking or drinking, if anything at all? And then what is your funniest church story ever? I'm going to start with Pamela, and then I'll do my introduction at the end. Pamela, go ahead and get us kicked off.
Okay, my name is Pamela Merritt. I don't really have a moniker, I don't think. I'm
The
not smoking
therapist.
anything
You're the
because
therapist.
I am the therapist. I'm the therapist. Thank you. I'm not smoking anything, but I am drinking coffee and wild turkey to make my signature cafe royale in my signature outcast mug. Me, you, your cousin, and your mama too. And my funniest experience, I've had several. I'm trying to think of one that's not offensive. But I remember when I was a teenager in the church choir. This has nothing to do with church hurt. One of my friend's little sister, who was the youngest out of our friend group, had pepper spray in her purse in the choir. She was probably 13, 14 years old. We were standing up for some reason. The pastor was talking about something, and she pulled it out to show it. It didn't have the cap on, and she squeezed it a little bit. So pepper spray, this is the young adult choir. Pepper spray is floating around in the choir stand. We don't want to get her in trouble, but we're all about to die. Like literally about to die. Eyes watering. And then at the same time, the fact that we were trying to keep it a secret, that she had sprayed the pepper spray, made it funny. So we were wiping our eyes, laughing, and couldn't breathe all at the same time because we were trying to keep her from getting in trouble. So yeah, that's my funny moment. The pepper spray in the choir stand in the middle of service.
That sounds like church hurt to me because I didn't have pepper spray in my eyes, and that is hurt. So if you got pepper spray in your eyes at church, that's church hurt. Appreciate it, Pamela. Let's go over to Grayson the Pundit.
Hey everyone, I'm Grayson. Today my nickname's the Pundit, pronouns he, him, his. I am not drinking the signature. I have done the Levitical thing and have kept my larceny and my coffee separate. I believe that is what the old Israelites would approve of, and so therefore that's what I do. Also, I do it despite Kervance. There is no signature here. So, but yeah, this is larceny. My pastor put me onto it. It's a slippery slope, and so it's one I'll gladly go down.
What? Your pastor put you on?
Oh yeah.
Who's your pastor?
If it weren't for my pastor, I would never heard of larceny.
What's your pastor's name?
Oh, Kristian A. Smith over at the Faith Community, the Heretic, as the good church folk call him.
Yo, he's called me last night and said he went to the liquor store to get the larceny, and he told the rep inside the store, "Oh yeah, my pastor put me onto this."
And he was just like, "Okay."
You got a new convert already, bro. You got a new convert already.
I said, I if I want to follow in the way of the Lord, I got to drink larceny, and he did not know what to do with it. So, my funniest moment. Uh-oh,
I think we lost him. Yeah, it looks like we lost him.
That's a great freeze frame, though.
It really is. It really is. So we'll have to come back to him. Let's kick it over to Karema. Akilah, the truth. It's so exciting to have you here today. Let's get
Hey, y'all. Hey, it's good to see y'all. So I am drinking some Cafe du Monde, and I'm pretending that this glazed Dunkin' Donut is a Cafe du Monde beignet. It ain't. I'm not doing that well pretending. Now, my funniest church story for any of my church friends that may be listening, don't tell all the business. I was about 12 years old, and my church was having the infamous Christmas, little Pollyanna gift. And so we put all our names in a little hat. You already know that this can go nowhere but downhill, right? So my name was drawn by none other than Daryl Singleton. Daryl Singleton was the chocolate of chocolate. Daryl Singleton was the young Big Daddy Kane in the making. That was who Daryl Singleton was to me. And Daryl Singleton got my name. So I went to my mama, the wrong person to go to when Daryl Singleton, the church crush, gets your name. I said, Ma, what should I tell Daryl to get me? My mother says, well, you need a new pair of stockings. So go on and tell him to get you, right. Go on and tell him to get you a new pair of stockings. Now, did I say that I was about 10, 11, 12? She ain't mean pantyhose. No, she meant the cotton stockings. You know what I'm saying? The kind that you had to pull up. And if you weren't careful, you outgrew them. The crotch came down like here below, like where your thighs are. And that's yeah. So my mama knew that my stockings, my crotch was in my thighs. And so she said, you better tell Daryl Singleton to get you some stockings. Now, I didn't know what to do with that. Me being a good, obedient child, I told Daryl Singleton to give me some stockings. I'm sure he ain't know what to do with it either. Because instead, I don't know what I got. I don't remember. I think he maybe give me a gift card or something. But I know I ain't getting no stockings. And I know that Daryl Singleton probably tried to forget that he ever knew who I was. So Daryl Singleton, if you're out there, Just wanted to say, hey, and hopefully that didn't cause you any church hurt, because to me, that was just hilarious.
With a name like Daryl Singleton, you gotta be fine, right? Your name can't be Daryl Singleton and you be ugly. That just don't even sound right. Stockings. Mama said get some stockings. Lord have mercy. All right, let's kick it over to the Kingmaker, and then we're gonna come back to Grayson to get his funny church story.
I don't know how to even recover from that, because I saw the crotch and I saw the white tight stockings. So sorry about that. Daryl, we love you, bro. I am the Kingmaker. Excited always to be a part of Holy Smokes. I am smoking my sponsorship stick from the beautiful people at PD Cigar, the sweet hand rolled Maduro, and I am drinking my signature Cafe Royale out of my Faith Community cup with my agave, my hazelnut cream, and allowing the partnership royale of the morning to be 1856. Uncle Nearest, thank you. I'm waiting on my sponsorship. We need you on the show, Uncle Nearest. We love you. We love everything about what you all do. So I got to prep this. And I'm going to change the name to protect the innocent. Any people who are hearing impaired, I am not insulting you at all. I want to give all the prefaces to it. So I was a deacon at church. I grew up in a traditional Baptist church, and we had devotion in our church. For those of you who've never been to a traditional Baptist church, devotion is the time where the deacons pretty much lead the congregation in a call and answer type of praise and worship experience. They do long meter hymns, congregational songs, prayers. So I'm setting the context. This is revival. It's like the second night of revival. For those of you who are not church people, revival is a quarterly event that allows people at this time in culture to do it weeks at a time. But we were at a 3-night revival. So there is a guy who is on the deacon board. He's a real buff. He's about 6'4", real big dude, but he's hearing impaired. And he's been encountering all of what's been going on. He grew up in church, and they give him an opportunity to pray. He reads lips really, really well. But if you've ever heard a hearing impaired person talk, the tones can elongate when they're talking. So I just got through raising a hymn. The church is right where they need to be. And I hand him the mic and step back. And we're in front of the congregation on a Thursday night. And all of a sudden, he decides that he wants to pray. And he wants to, in his mind tone, articulate what he's seen from the energy and the rhythm of church in his prayer. Let me give you the context. In the Black church, often the preacher or the deacon will kind of tune or put a rhythmic dynamic to their prayer. And after this church, most of them don't know that he's hearing impaired. He grabs the microphone at full volume with full monitors and says, "Father God, yes, we want to thank you, Heavenly Father. We got to praise you, yeah, Father God." And he goes through the whole prayer in full volume, trying to tune in his hearing impaired dynamic. And I'm standing up, and I don't know what to do because I'm in front of the congregation, and he has no idea that he's at top volume. And the congregation is like, what in the world? And I'm trying to keep a straight face. My Father God, yes, we're ready to give you praise. And he went all like this for the whole prayer. I'm trying to tell you, nobody sung after him. They literally gave the microphone to the minister to call the service to worship. And it was an eerie silence over the whole service moving forward. So that's my funny church moment. I hope it didn't offend anybody. I'm just recounting experiences that I've had in church.
I'm in tears. I was so nervous about where that was going, and I kind of feel bad for laughing, but that's how comedy works sometimes, man. Sometimes it's the stuff you're not supposed to laugh at that be the funniest. And that actually, my story is going to be very similar. But let's go over to Grayson. Grayson, give us your story real quick, and then I introduce myself. We'll keep going.
Hey, everybody. Sorry, my internet cut out. And I can't blame it on Tennessee this time. This is good old Atlanta Wi-Fi. So I don't know what to tell you. But
first of all, Grayson, Atlanta does not give out Wi-Fi. That's your provider. So don't put that on Atlanta. I'm not about to let you do that, Doc.
AT&T, get it together. How about that?
Thank you. Because if we gave out Wi-Fi, everybody would be connected. Because we don't have Wi-Fi. You got to deal with AT&T. Keep going.
So mine is more funny in like the way of The Office. Like it's not really like laugh out loud funny, even though The Office can be. It's more like cringy funny. But it does go nicely with my church hurt, religious trauma. So again, hope this isn't offensive just because of the realness of it. It's about a story about me and me only. But my seventh grade, the summer between my seventh grade and eighth grade year, so 2007, 2008, we as a youth group went up to Boston for a summer camp called Passport, which I went to for years, worked at. It's a really, really big part of my spirituality and my upbringing. But because of religious trauma and church hurt, I was essentially asexual, not in like orientation, but practice until my freshman year, after my freshman year of college. So from 2007 to 2014, I didn't touch anyone else and I didn't touch myself. Just let that sink in. And that means that the clearance sale, everything must go eventually. So I'm sleeping in the back of a church van on our way back from Boston in like a 16-hour drive, full seventh grader, 13-year-old struggling with his sexuality. And I literally have a wet dream in the back seat of a church van full of people. And because I'm not masturbating, so it has to go somewhere. And so I wake up, we're pulling into a gas station, fortunately, but I wake up, realize what's happened because the evidence is there. And fortunately, since I'm in the back seat, there is like all our luggage is there. So I like wake up and I'm like kind of shuffling over the seat and I grab I grabbed some underwear from my suitcase, put it in my pocket, then kind of like shuffle to the gas station bathroom, and then switch it out, pull the evidence, put it in my pocket. No one was the wiser, but yeah, I feel like that just kind of sums up what it's like to be struggling with your sexuality in a youth group in church. So probably still have to process that in therapy. I'll give you a call, Pam. But yeah.
I don't think I've ever felt so much secondhand embarrassment in my life.
Oh my God.
Hey, I'm about to, if you give me about 13 minutes, I'm going to run up to the corner store. I need to get me some Pall Malls. I'm not going to be able to smoke no cigar here. I need a cigarette right now. I need full menthol right now. I can't do it, man. I'm coming right back. I'm going to go get me Pall Malls right quick. Right.
Oh my God.
It was not fun.
Oh my, yeah, that was definitely cringe-worthy. That was definitely cringe-worthy. So, again, I'm Kristian, the host of Heretic. I'm smoking the Holy Smokes hand-rolled Connecticut. You can get this if you're one of our patrons in the Cigar Club, or if you're one of our premium members, either at the $20 or $30 level. Go over to patreon.com/TFCATL and join us on Patreon and be a part of these live recordings. Also, today I'm having the Kingmaker's Signature Cafe Royale, and I put some Noah's Mill in mine. It's a high proof bourbon in my Cafe Royale today. My funniest story is so inappropriate. I feel really bad that this happened because Pamela lost a very close friend of hers, and she's laughing already. She lost a very close friend of hers, and I really try to be supportive to my wife with whatever she's going through. So we're going to the funeral. She's distraught because this was a really good dude, and she just talked about, the impact that he had on her life. And I'm like, let me be here for my wife because she's struggling. So we go to the funeral, and I'm sitting there, I got my arm around her and just trying to console and comfort her. Everybody in there is sad. And then this lady gets up to sing a solo. And she's like, y'all forgive me, I'm a little bit hoarse today, but the Lord he put this song on my heart and I want to sing it for y'all. And I'm just trying to be there for my wife, but I'm allergic to bad singing, like literally have allergic reactions to bad singing, right? So she starts singing in a key I've never heard of. And in the first 15 seconds, she changed keys like 4 times. Pamela said 8. So I'm I'm sitting there trying to hold it together like, Kristian. I'm talking to myself, like I'm in my seat and I got my head down like, Kristian, don't fall apart. This is a funeral. Don't do it. But she kept singing and it got worse and worse. So then like I just started laughing hysterically. But like I kept my head down and I was doing like this. So some people thought I was crying, but I was really laughing because I tried so hard to hold it in. So when it came out, I could not control it. And Pamela was, she was looking at me like this, like in the middle of the funeral. And I was like, oh my God, I am so sorry. And everybody was like,
Wow. He laughed so hard. My coworker was next to him and said, "You ought to be ashamed of yourself." He had to get up and leave.
and
He
it was
laughed
that
so
day
hard.
that I promised if anybody ever had a funeral that I know and they needed somebody to sing, I would volunteer, because I never volunteer myself to sing. But on that day, I said I will not allow somebody to have to suffer through that at a funeral when I'm available to sing. So y'all need somebody to sing, I'll sing something. I'll sing Amazing Grace if y'all need me to, as long as we don't have to experience that again. So that was the funniest story, which was really inappropriate. All right, let's keep it moving. We added a new segment this season called a cigar tip. We've heard from Tiger, we've heard from Myron, we've heard from the Kingmaker. Today we got the Kingmaker bringing us the Kingmaker's cigar corner. So go ahead and give us our tip for the day, Kingmaker.
What's going on, everybody? It's Saturday where I am. Doesn't matter when you're watching it, it's Saturday where you are. Do your thing. Barry White, come on and help us with this cigar tip of the day. I don't want you to ever be confused that there are no other cigar corners. Tiger doesn't exist. Myron doesn't exist. Not in this space. It's my corner. Barry White is helping you understand that I have to do my thing in this space. This is worth a $30 membership. So because of the fact that you realize that the Kingmaker is the only person that can give you this tip, take a puff right quick. I'll give you a few. That's the kind of guy I am. Number one, do not smoke a cigar like you smoke a cigarette. You don't inhale this. You got to take your time. You got to enjoy it. Cigars are generally by length connected to time. So you may have a 45-minute, an hour. Man, you got to let Barry Wright ride that. I'm sorry. He was not even interrupting. He was complimenting. It's a cigar. And that's a great segue to the fact that the second tip is you got to find the right complimentary beverage. Some of you may do a Cafe Royale. You may do a bourbon. You may do a scotch. Whatever you do your thing. Final tip. Barry White is doing such a great job. It's Saturday. Let's just listen to him for a second. It's a good time to smoke a cigar. That's another tip. Enjoy the moment. Final tip. Don't light another person's cigar. I know you may be trying to introduce people to the cigar platform, but because they may pull too hard, allow them the privilege of lighting their own cigar so that they don't burn or consume too much of the leaf or the tobacco. Allow them to get that gauge. Once you understand that nobody has given you more than one tip in a segment, you now realize that there's a benefit to the Kingmaker Cigar Corner. And this Saturday, wherever you are, I'm encouraging you to do your thing. It's the Kingmaker. It's a cigar tip of the day. Do your thing.
The drama. Can we put our hands together for Kervance the Kingmaker Ross, everybody?
I can't. I am contractually obligated to stand. The drama is just too good.
Yes, sir. All right. So we already started with our funny church stories, which sometimes can be tied to church hurt. And I think it's important for this particular episode today, as we talk about religious trauma and how it's connected to church hurt. We wanted to bring Pamela on because this is her area of expertise. Pamela is a professional therapist, licensed clinical social worker, and she specializes in religious trauma as well as gay affirmative therapy and general emotional harmony. And what I want Pamela to do right now is to tell us, like, what is religious trauma? If you'll take a few minutes and just introduce us to what religious trauma even is, a definition of it. Pamela, I'm gonna kick it over to you.
Sure. That's a great question. Religious trauma is a culmination of symptoms that manifest themselves when somebody is either in the process of breaking away from their religious community or they have already broken away from their religious community. And these religious communities are usually your strict fundamentalist religious communities or religious cult communities. But it's like it's really strict, usually rule-keeping theology, very strict doctrine. Sometimes it's more than emotional abuse. Sometimes there's some physical abuse involved. But the religious trauma comes from the symptoms that manifest themselves. And it looks like PTSD, but it's a direct result of someone's interaction with their community of faith.
You gave it to us quick. All right. Well, then let's go ahead and keep it going. So when we think about religious trauma, Pamela, I want to kick it right back over to you and introduce like the first answer to this question. How do you separate religious trauma from church hurt?
Okay. I didn't know that was short. But okay, so I'll say this. I remember a couple of years ago, there was a meme floating around. I don't remember what started it, but there was a meme floating around and all of this talk around church hurt. And especially in the Black community, I'm talking about what my social media timeline looked like, was a bunch of jokes like, oh, so-and-so didn't get to sing in the choir. That's not traumatic. Church hurt just comes with the territory. Stuff like that. It was extremely dismissive. And it bothered me so much that I think I've made a post about it, like how dismissive we are of people's pain when it comes from church. So the difference between church hurt and religious trauma is church hurt is more of an interpersonal, which means interaction between people, relationships between people. That is, church hurt is more of an interpersonal situation. So interpersonal meaning there may be a disagreement that you have with somebody that's at your church, a fellow church member, or even an authority figure or leader at your church. Something happens that offends you or hurts your feelings, and there may be multiple offenses, but that is interpersonal. And somebody may decide, hey, this church isn't for me. I don't feel included. I don't feel accepted. I don't feel like things are fair. So I'm going to leave and find another church. Or people may take a break from the church that they go to and then come back because, certain things aren't going the way that they feel they should, and they just need to pull back because they need to kind of heal from some things. But when I go down the list of those things, it's always based on relationship, somebody's relationship in church, right? The religious trauma is different because religious trauma is systematic. Religious trauma comes from the system, the doctrine that the church goes by, the rules that the church goes by is what causes the trauma. So we have hurt feelings that people may really need to have counseling about, but it's based on relationship. And then we have religious trauma that is coming from being involved in a certain type of toxic system. So you have your doctrine, your rules, the preaching, the teaching, all of that stuff that is centered around the framework or the theology of that particular faith community is what causes the trauma when people have either left that faith community or they're in the process of leaving. So church hurt is interpersonal, meaning relationships between people, and religious trauma is systematic because it's based on the church doctrine or the theology.
I think it's so interesting how you broke that down, the parallels between like different forms of oppression or trauma. Because when we talk about racial interaction in our country, we talk about the difference between your interpersonal experience with somebody of a different race over and against how the system impacts you. And I think to bring that to the conversation about religious trauma and church hurt is so relevant to help people see the difference, because you're right, many people have minimized things that may really be tied to religious trauma, and they've just called it church hurt, when in reality, no, this was not just church hurt. This was a traumatic experience. Somebody didn't just tell you you can't lead a solo on Sunday because you can't sing. Like, it went a lot deeper than that for a lot of people, but we just gloss over it completely. I want to hear from some other people now that Pamela's kind of giving us that breakdown, the truth. Like, do you have any thoughts on religious trauma versus church hurt?
I do. And Pamela, thank you for breaking that down, because I was sitting here trying to decide which one. So with that very clear explanation, I know exactly where my trauma came from, and it is religious trauma. Born and raised in a very Black Baptist experience, and then going to college and then attending another church in Maryland. Pastoral worship was something that I didn't know that I had become a part of, right? Just uplifting the first family and all that went along with that. And then leaving that experience, right, in the Black Baptist church with the pastoral worship, moving to a white church where they don't have that. And I was completely confused. And it was going to that white church that now, of course, there were some other traumas that happened as a result of that experience, but that made me look back at all my other previous experiences and really realize that, you know, I've been sold a whole bill of goods. Like, what the hell? What exactly are we teaching? So just that for me, the first trauma that I experienced, I think, was just coming out of almost like it felt like cultish almost, you know, that pastoral worship thing, that, you know, these people get to sit on the dais, right? I'm never going to be able to sit on the dais because, you know, I'm not part of the lineage. I'm not one of the children, the cousins, you know, the auntie or something. And so because of that, there are tiers of importance, you know, in the church. And then you get into, well, then how much money do you give? Or, you know, who's your family? And then if you know, are low on the rung, well, then, you know, why the hell come? So it was something, and I didn't even realize that it was something that I was experiencing until I had stepped out of it. So this topic is fascinating to me. And I think now I'm in a place where we haven't gone to church, and I can't even remember, and this is before Corona. And I think it's because the death of my husband, and the church didn't know what to do with me. I felt like I didn't fit anywhere. And I just remember feeling very, very isolated, you know, and just kind of, you know, if I were back in the Old Testament, it would be like, oh, she's unclean, you know, stay over there. It was just, I think I'm still sorting through it. So I think I might need to join Kervance on the chase and get me some therapy time. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's like that. Like, Pamela, real quick, can you just share like how when you work with your religious trauma clients, how generally like they don't even realize that they've been suffering from religious trauma?
Yeah, it's a really interesting thing. The indoctrination of a lot of these faith communities or religious communities, I prefer to say just religious communities, the way the indoctrination works is so strategic in taking an individual's autonomy away. And I mean, I'm not just talking about the things that you do, I'm talking about autonomy across the board. What you think, the way you interact with people, the places that you go, the things that you incorporate into your lifestyle. And so while you are figuring out how you fit into this indoctrination, you lose yourself, you lose your individuality as you go. And things that would be natural for you, like if there's conflict, you get angry, and you may sit with that anger for a while till you work it out, and then you make up with the person, or maybe not. Something may make you sad, something may make you grieve. When you're being indoctrinated, those things are taken and they are put into the we don't feel that, or we cover that with prayer, or we cover that with scripture, or we cover that with a happy face, and we just pretend like those unpleasant feelings don't exist. So when I get with my clients and we start unpacking their religious experiences, there's a phase that I call body consciousness, where the clients start to actually feel the things that they've been told are not acceptable feelings. So a lot of my clients experience anger and rage, and they have first of all, they can't identify it because they haven't been allowed to feel it. So they say stuff like, I don't even know what this is. I don't know what this feeling is. It's so uncomfortable. It's so, maybe I should just forgive them. Maybe I should just, and I say, no, that is anger. And anger is acceptable. Let's talk about that anger. So you're absolutely right. A lot of them, because of the way they've been indoctrinated, don't even have the language for the emotions. They don't have the language for anger. They don't have the language for genuine excitement or pleasure. Like, it's just completely numb. And so I spend a lot of time giving them language for the feelings that they're trying to explain. I hope that answered your question.
Absolutely. That is really good. And it seemed to resonate with Grayson a lot. So, Grayson, take a couple of minutes, man. What are your thoughts and feelings on the difference between religious trauma and church hurt and how that might tie into your experience, and then we'll kick it over to the Kingmaker.
Yeah, you were attuned, you were aware, because I know my face doesn't let me not express myself. Tyranny and I have that in common. But yeah, that definitely really resonated with me. And I'll start by saying that I don't have a lot of church hurt, but I have a lot of religious trauma. Because based off of Pam's model, which was so well expressed and so helpful, there are very few people from my like growing up church days, because as I've shared many times, like my church was not the cultish fundamentalist, like super conservative church. So even with that said, though, even though I didn't have really anybody that was mean to me, there was this one guy who was older than me in the youth group that was kind of a jerk, but he wasn't like a bully. Never was bullied for what people perceived to be my sexuality, at least in a church setting, or any other aspect of me. I still got religious trauma because, like Pam said, it's systemic, it's systematic, it's the air we breathe. And so even though people weren't like breathing that air into me, I was still breathing it nonetheless, because my church, being moderate, didn't inject the toxin further, but it also didn't help to suck it out. So because we live in such a culture, broadly, religiously, socially, all of the above, that is built on and perpetuates, meaning continuing, homophobia, I nonetheless still got religious trauma. And all of that results in me being very unfamiliar with and unable to express mostly my anger. And that is something I'm still working on, because I think it is in those emotions like joy and grief and anger, those emotions that produce body responses, whether it's tears, whether it's balling up our fists, whether it's turning red in the face, whether it's just, ecstatic, meaning out of body joy. That's when our truest selves are revealed. And so for me personally, that truest self was something, the revelation of which would have put me in danger, at least as I perceived it as a young person, as a teenager. And so for me to be angry at that which I should have been angry at means I would have revealed a self that the church would either have merely tolerated or would have actively condemned. So better not to get angry and just be level or be happy all the time, because that is not real, and the church isn't equipped to deal with people. It's equipped to deal with those people who are numb enough to be manipulated. And so that's why when I ran cross country in high school, my every year, so I ran from 8th grade to senior year, so 5 years, my cross country coach would call me the Zen master, because while everyone else on the team, well, at least the guys, were running, they would have like angry faces and they would use their anger to propel them, and they just looked like you're supposed to look when you're literally like running yourself to like the point of vomiting. Like you're supposed to look angry and hurt. Meanwhile, I'm running and I'm just like, this is nice. I'm just running. I'd like to do well. And I realize now that like I was a Zen master because I didn't master any of my other emotions, at least like the big ecstatic ones. I was known as the really good kid. My brother was the angry one. I was the people pleaser. And so, yeah, like part of undoing my religious trauma and moving further into myself was actually knowing what to do with my anger and not being afraid of it, and thereby entitling myself to fuller joy.
Yeah, it sounds like what's coming out in this conversation is that the suppression of emotions is a major component of religious trauma.
Mm-hmm.
That our religious doctrines and theologies require people to suppress their true emotions, and we've talked about that at the faith community over and over again. Pamela has done a few sessions on that, and It looked like Pamela wanted to drop a line, and then we're gonna go back to the Kingmaker.
Yeah. Just real quick, I just wanted to connect the dots because I didn't talk about like the symptoms that some of the symptoms Grayson was talking about, like anxiety, depression, obsessive thoughts is another one. And the way that the dots are connected is because people are having a hard time trying to keep up. It's about keeping up and trying to be good enough, trying to be holy enough, trying to be righteous enough. And these symptoms develop because maintaining that lifestyle under that strict rule-keeping theology is impossible. But because your church tells you that that's where you have to be and where you have to get to, it like all of these other symptoms develop because trying to do that is unrealistic. And all the person can think about is either sowing and reaping something bad in their current life or eternal damnation if they don't get all of these rules right. So that's where the numbing the feelings come from, because you can't do these things and keep up these rules if you're going to be mad and sad and grieve. You got to push that down in order to get these rules right. That's all I wanted to add.
And I do want, sorry, I just want to say,
that was worthy of being added. Go ahead, real quick, Grayson. We got to get to the Kingmaker.
Yeah, like I definitely developed my OCD, the obsessive thoughts, because of essentially trying to memorize lines. Like when you're memorizing lines for a theater production or a play or whatever, like you have to obsess over those lines to play your role right. And so I obsessed over the bodily lines, the emotional lines, so that I could play the role I thought I was supposed to play right and get the applause and not get thrown tomatoes at, to extend the metaphor. So that definitely resonates.
Yeah, absolutely. Kingmaker, what are your thoughts, man? Church hurt, religious trauma. What you got?
I had no idea that this session was going to resonate so well. I kind of vacillated. Vacillating means to go back and forth between thoughts.
He defined it, but I get it. But he defined it.
Gay agenda.
Go ahead, Kingmaker.
I have holy smokes trauma as well, because of such situations like this. You got to live up to a standard of the Q+ agenda. I don't like it. But Pam, your definition was so insightful, and I realized that I have church hurt and religious trauma that I've worked through. I have been embarrassed in church. I have been hurt by church. Now, I've been able to decipher it in my head as God's weird process of getting you to purpose. But it put me in positions where right before me and Kristian became friends, I was trying to be done with church for 12 months. I got tired of the system, the process, the regulations. And it was traumatic for me because I knew I was different the entire time being in church. And the challenge was I had never found anybody that had done the marketplace and ministry in the same space. So when you're talking a language that the church has condemned and they see you in a role that the church embraces, and now you're encountering an experience that the church has negated, you become the outcast. So I had to deal with that. On top of that, there were certain ways that because I was always in major or mega ministries, that you dealt with pastors. You couldn't tell your thoughts. You couldn't be transparent, or they would bash you or shut you down. Even now, as a pastor working in tandem with my senior pastor, I have issues speaking to him my thoughts because I'm expecting the template that I've seen in the past. I'm expecting you to be negative. I'm expecting you to be short. I'm expecting you to be condescending. And he helps me work through it. On the flip side, the trauma piece has to do with my believing that church is more than what we've been conditioned to believe. I realized that the Bible was bigger than the context we had culturally connected it to. So even holy smokes, I'll share transparently when we did our live session, even though I know I've gone through the steps of explaining why I smoke cigars and understanding the marketplace, there was tension for me that the church would condemn me in my position because of how they've condemned it so many other times. And you just kind of learn how to navigate it being black, all the other stuff you've learned how to navigate, all the other stuff you've learned how to press, all the other stuff you've learned how to deal with, and you spiritualize it. And for you to explain it that way, it's numbing because when you're in between church hurt and religious trauma, and then somebody explains it to you from a clinical standpoint, you realize you've gone through a lot just to be in a relationship with God. And then you lead people with that fear. And you got to turn around and navigate your pain, your trauma, and then give people the opportunity to see God. It's a lot. So I'm grateful for the conversation, but it definitely makes you look inside.
Yeah, man. And we're going to continue this even after the episode ends. I got a feeling we're going to have a lot of bonus content today for our Patreon audience because we've only like hit the surface. And I think, for me, and then we'll kick it over to Pamela and, start to wrap up the official episode and do some stuff behind the scenes. For me, I think what people tend to do is mix up religious trauma and church hurt by using the term accountability. So people will say, oh, you just don't want to be held accountable. And you saying that, the church did you wrong really because you don't want to be held accountable. And the reality is we have to go take a step back and ask, what are we asking people to be held accountable to? Because many times we're holding people accountable to unattainable standards. You can't knock somebody who cannot attain a standard that is beyond their reach, because the church tries to hold people accountable to inhumane standards, meaning I want you to diminish your humanity to uphold the standard of our doctrine or theology. And I believe that's where people get mixed up with church hurt and religious trauma. What are we holding people accountable to and why? Right. And that's where people tend to get caught up. Pamela, I want you to share some thoughts and about your practice and why this is important. And then I got a couple more questions after this and after we shut down the episode.
The reason why this is important is that thing that you said, that accountability thing. A lot of the hard work in the body consciousness part of religious trauma therapy. And again, that body consciousness is about helping my clients connect to their feelings and actually feel that feeling. And we process where that came from and what to do with that. But that is the most difficult part for my clients. They struggle with feeling anything negative about where they came from because the church has indoctrinated them to think that whenever they do something and they get this feeling that is conviction. If something feels uncomfortable to you, if something makes you feel bad, if you feel like you should hide this, that is the Holy Ghost convicting you. It's not that this thing is overwhelming. It's not that this thing is toxic. It's not that this thing that we're asking you to do, the standard, is emotionally damaging to you as a human being. We wrap it up in accountability and conviction. So that work that I do to try to get my clients to be honest about what they feel and allow themselves to feel it. It's really hard for people to connect to those emotions when those emotions have been in some way tied to their eternal life. If you are angry and you don't do something with that anger like forgiveness or suffocation is what I call it, when they suffocate your feelings. You don't do something holy with that, you will go to hell, because God will be angry with you because you held that unpleasant feeling in your heart and in your mind. So that is a really, that area takes a lot of work, because that goes back to that thing that you talk about, that hardwiring, that indoctrination. The way indoctrination works in a lot of our religious contexts is more powerful than the upbringing of your parents in some instances. So imagine like people that have really close relationships with their moms and dads or whoever their guardian and caretaker, to go against what your caretaker told you all your whole life is one thing. But to be indoctrinated and get this framework that tells you any slight step off the line, that your eternal life is in jeopardy, that's major trauma. And I tell people that any religious framework that you go into, that you have to leave an essential piece of your humanity at the door, you can guarantee it's going to be traumatic.
So as you can see, we got to keep this conversation going. Yes. Oh, we're going to keep this going. Listen, shout out to our patrons who will be able to continue this conversation with us. If you're listening on Fam Radio or any of the podcast platforms, you can connect with Pamela at therapyandtheology.com. Therapy, the letter N, theology.com. I'll do some work with her on the theological side of this conversation. Join us for our next episode called The Devil's Lettuce, a Christ-like response to cannabis. We'll see you here next time on Holy Smokes, Cigars and Spirituality.